Hi, I'm Barb with KCC-TV, and I am sitting today in the newly remodeled Rainy Lake Medical Center Therapy and Wellness Center with Wyatt LaVigne, who is the director of the Therapy and Wellness Center here. He's also a physical therapist and an athletic trainer. One of the reasons I wanted to meet with Wyatt was we're coming to the culmination of the NFL football season, and there's a lot of conversation really around concussions, and a lot of controversy, a lot of conversation.
Yep.
And I think even before all of this really became a big media story, it's been something you've been following, and you've been really working hard in our community to educate around.
Yes, absolutely.
So it seemed like a perfect opportunity to come in here. The timing is right, the department is remodeled, it's a hot topic. And for me, really, as someone who has kids in sports and worries about them,
Yes.
I was wondering, how did you come to having such a deep interest in really becoming a champion of this sort of area of therapy and wellness?
Yeah, I would say that for me, it started as an athlete myself back,
Okay.
Being from town in high school here. I had my first concussion as a bantam hockey player.
Oh.
And then throughout the course of my high school and a couple years of college hockey, I had a few more concussions on top of that.
Okay.
And with that, we were at a time where medical research on concussions was kind of in its infancy.
Right.
And care, in my case, wasn't up to the level it is today, definitely. And because of that, I ended up having some issues with my concussions, and it ended up leading me to get a thing called post-concussion syndrome.
Okay.
And eventually, I had to hang up my skates and stop playing hockey because of it.
Really?
Yeah, and it affected my schoolwork. It was something that was pretty impactful on me as an
Okay.
athlete, and it happened to happen while I was in college, at a time where I was kind of deciding what I wanted to do with my career.
Sure.
And that's what led me to go into athletic training and then physical therapy
Okay.
afterwards, was my experience around concussions. It kind of lit a passion under me, if you will.
Okay.
And then from my training as an athletic trainer and physical therapist, I kind of realized with the current state of medical evidence for concussions was really growing rapidly.
Okay.
And there's really a need, not just in our community, but across the country, really, for
Sure.
better concussion care. And I think it's been a gradual change, but I've really tried to champion that, if you will, in our community to make sure that our kids got the best care they could, and hopefully help a few of them avoid the same sort of pitfalls that kind of came to me, I guess, as a former athlete
Right.
as well.
So you're really looking at it as educating for prevention?
Oh yes, I think there's multiple facets to
Okay.
it. Prevention is probably the biggest area where we can have an impact.
Okay.
The other thing is just making sure that parents and coaches know the simple things to do if they suspect a kid might have possibly had a concussion or injury from a fall in sport or something like that. Concussions typically are a pretty mild injury if they're handled correctly.
Okay.
It's when they aren't handled correctly that you really run into some issues, essentially, with kids having too many concussions in a short time frame, and that can set them up for problems. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, where kids get post-concussion syndrome, they miss a significant time of school. It can really impact them in those sorts of ways. And we're also finding out, this has kind of been in the spotlight with the NFL now,
Right.
that people who have a long history of concussions and even milder head injuries over their lifespan or over many years are at risk of long-term effects down the road, similar to things like Alzheimer's,
Sure.
ALS, or even a new thing that's been in that research a lot is a thing called CTE, or
Yeah.
chronic traumatic encephalopathy. They're finding a lot of these NFL players now, as they get into their 5th or 6th decade of life, are having some pretty severe issues because of it. Some have even committed suicide, and
It affects their mental health.
Exactly.
So it can.
Significantly
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
term, yes. So the better we manage concussions up front, I think the more we can minimize the risk of that. There's still a lot to learn research-wise, but the better we can take care of it now, I think we can help these kids live a longer, more successful life with fewer issues because of it.
Right. It used to be it was bad knees, right?
Yeah.
A bad back from,
Yeah.
these sports.
Yeah.
And those are serious and definitely affect quality of
Yes.
life.
Absolutely.
This is something that's really different when you start talking neurologically, and it
Yeah.
can literally change personality.
Absolutely. Yep.
So,
A
Yeah.
bad knee or a bad back is a difficult thing for someone to deal with from athletics. But having dementia or a potential brain disease later on in life from your sports, that's, I think we both agree, a whole different level
Yeah.
of essentially of pathology, or a whole different level of an effect on a person's well-being.
And really, it's been, it's kind of followed that path where someone well-known, for many years
Yep.
has to suffer this
Yes.
before the studies really become more concentrated
Yes.
and more
Yep.
money is invested. You talked about your experience in college. Are you
Yeah.
okay with talking a little bit about, how did you realize that this was happening to you as an athlete?
It's a really good question.
Yeah.
It's a really good question.
Are you comfortable talking about
Well,
it?
of course,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
definitely. I've probably had this conversation to some degree with the vast majority of my patients who come
Okay.
through our concussion
Okay.
management program anyways, because I think it teaches a few lessons, I guess, if
Sure.
you will. When I was a bantam, I had my first concussion.
Okay.
And I recovered well, wasn't an issue. I got back to sports. Then my senior year of high school, I had my second concussion.
And you're wearing a helmet the whole time?
Yes, wearing a helmet.
Yeah.
Helmets, on an aside, helmets don't really prevent much in
Okay.
terms of concussion.
Lots of education around
Yeah.
this, yeah.
They can prevent a lot of potential head injuries like skull fractures and things like that, but in terms of concussion, they don't really have much of an impact. So you can wear the best helmet in the world, and it's still not going to really change your concussion risk. If anything, it might make you feel a little bit of like a little bit of a risk
Riskier.
taker or
So
something.
let's, if you don't mind, I want to continue to answer that question, but I think
Yep.
this sounds like it's a perfect time to talk about the difference between a head injury
Yes.
and a concussion, and why a helmet.
Oh yeah,
Right,
it's
it
an
isn't that
interesting
piece.
question. Yeah, yep. There's a wide range of head injuries. There's a wide range of traumatic brain injuries too. Concussion is kind of on the one end of the spectrum, and then there's more severe traumatic brain injuries that occur further down the spectrum that we see
Okay.
in really intense collisions, and especially in like the military and stuff.
Okay.
Athletes pretty much center around concussion being their main brain injury that can occur. But if you think of the mechanics of a concussion, basically the way it works, your brain rests inside your skull.
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
brain is surrounded by fluid.
Yeah.
If you take a hit to the head or a blow to the chest or something, whether it's in sports or on the playground or just in day-to-day life, that gives the chance for your head to rapidly accelerate side to side.
Yeah.
And when that happens, side to side or forward and back
Sure.
or any direction, when that happens, your brain essentially moves inside that fluid in the skull.
Which is how it's created, in a
Yes,
sense,
it's
right?
designed to work that
We
way,
have a helmet,
essentially.
right?
And even with a helmet on above that, you're still going
That
to
still
have that
happens.
acceleration is still going to cause the brain to move inside
Because
the
it
skull.
happens internally as
Yeah,
opposed
exactly,
to externally.
yeah.
Okay.
One example that physicians have given is that you could, if you imagine an egg,
Mhm.
there's fluid inside the egg and then the yolk.
Right.
And if you liken your brain to that yolk,
Sure.
if you will, if
It's very
you
visual.
shake that egg,
You can
that
scramble
yolk
that yolk.
you can scramble that yolk. And it doesn't matter if you wrap that egg in 50 pounds of bubble wrap. If you
Right.
shake it, that yolk can
That's
still
a
get
really
scrambled.
vivid
It's the same sort of
example. Sure.
the analogy.
Yep, yep.
So that's kind of where we get when in terms of helmets, it doesn't seem that helmets have much of an effect. And that's kind of been shown study after study.
Okay.
Yep.
So then, coming back, and thank you for letting me
Yeah.
take that,
Bit of
take
an
that look.
aside, yeah.
But it was absolutely related.
Yeah, definitely. Good information.
It is, and it really helps people understand that difference, because
Yeah.
helmets are being marketed as
Yeah.
affecting concussions, and
In-
that's a
in
different
my opinion,
conversation,
a little
maybe.
recklessly, yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
We're all looking for something to make it okay.
Yes. It'd be great if it did, too.
Wouldn't
but,
it?
yeah.
So then back to the original question that led us there is your experience in college then. So you had
Oh, yes.
you had two
Yeah.
major concussions in high school.
Yep, and I recovered. I was advised to sit out about a week and go back into sports, which was pretty standard at the time.
Yeah.
I recovered well from both of them. Then I decided I wanted to go on and play some hockey in college. My freshman year of college, I had my third concussion.
Okay.
Got the same advice I had for my other two. I recovered well. I didn't have a single symptom. I was back to playing in about a week. I felt great. I at the time, basically coaches and athletic trainers kind of looked at a concussion as something that, oh, shake it off, you'll be fine, you go back out there and play.
Mm-hmm.
And
because that's the knowledge that
was the knowledge
available to
level
them.
at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yep. So I didn't think much of it. I didn't worry much of it. Looking at it now from an outsider's perspective, after that, I should have been pretty tipped off
Sure.
that this could potentially be something more serious. My sophomore year of college, I had my 4th concussion, but it was unidentified by my athletic trainer.
Oh, okay.
I took a hit. I was groggy, I was a little dazed, and it was such a mild hit that my athletic trainer wasn't too worried about it.
It could be bad.
Exactly.
Yeah,
We know
yeah.
now from concussions that the more you have, the less force it takes to get subsequent concussions.
Okay, so can you say that again?
Yeah, the more concussions you have, the less force, the less of a hit, the less impact
it doesn't
takes.
have to be a train.
Yeah,
It could be,
those first
okay.
ones, typically we see someone gets just leveled, or
Right.
just hit very hard, or it's a really strong contact. Down the road, it's the slightest bump can set a person off.
Okay.
Almost is the way
Okay.
I guess I'd liken it to.
Yeah.
Yep. And basically, that's what happened with me. My athletic trainer didn't catch it. I continued to play. Looking back, I don't remember much of it now.
Wow.
And I took another hit. I think it was we played Friday and Saturday games, and I think it was my second game. I took
Okay.
another hit. With that, it kind of set me off. I had instant severe headaches. I ended up having to miss a couple weeks hockey. I ended up actually missing the rest of the year after it. I had trouble in school. I couldn't concentrate. And it ended up taking probably a good 3 months to recover from.
Wow.
And I know now that's classified as post-concussion syndrome.
Okay.
At the time, being as I hadn't started my education yet, I looked at it as, something's clearly not right. I met with my parents, we talked
Yeah.
about it. I decided that at that point I was just going to quit hockey. It wasn't
Okay.
worth it anymore the way I was
Okay.
feeling related to my concussions. I met with a doctor in Grand Forks at the time who was pretty well renowned as a neurologist. And
Okay.
he at the time gave me some pretty good advice on concussion risk and stuff, at least based on what was known then. And
Mhm.
we made the choice that I was going to be done at that point.
Okay.
Thankfully, since then, after 3 or 4 rocky months, things have been good. I haven't had too many issues from concussions.
Okay.
Personally, there's a chance I could be in the boat like some of these NFL players
What the future holds
later
as of yet.
on down the line, where I
Sure.
could be affected in the same way. But going through that process and kind of learning about it as I did, it's kind of what sparked my interest and ended up guiding me down this career as an athletic trainer and physical therapist. And it's kind of been my passion now, in addition to many other roles I serve, to try to make sure that the people in my hometown, athletes and non-athletes too for that matter,
Sure.
that they get managed as well as we can based on the info we have now, and hopefully can help prevent them from having some of the same issues that I had as an athlete. And we're finding in the media now that so many professional, collegiate, and even high school athletes are having too because of
Sure.
it. Yeah,
So then the conversation for me, and I'm thinking as someone who's been really had a great experience, but I was a substitute teacher for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was in Wyatt.
Oh, sure.
And I did have a student get a concussion during one of the classes I was teaching.
Sure.
And it scared me. I mean, that stuff scares me anyways, right?
Yeah,
I'm a
understandable.
mom, that's someone's baby, right?
Yep.
And then all of the other things that come along with it. So I think as parents, unless we've made time to come and see one of your presentations, which
Yeah.
I'm really kicking myself now for not doing, the information is coming to us as marketing around a helmet.
Yeah.
And so
instead of good quality information
Right.
on the management of concussions.
yeah,
Yep.
so as a parent, as a volunteer coach, as someone who might be in the arena, any arena,
Yes.
outside, inside, wherever, kids play.
Yes.
You know, where something like this could happen.
Mhm.
Where do we start? What do we do as parents?
Yeah,
What do we look at?
It's a great question. I think that's been one area I've really tried to emphasize in our community is getting out there, and I typically end up giving 2 or 3 talks a year
Okay.
at various events, whether it's a high school talk, whether it's a youth hockey talk, meeting with coaches directly to discuss concussions, because I think my role here, treating concussions, is half of it. The other half is making sure that parents and coaches and players have at least a basic understanding of some of the simple things of concussion, because that, in my opinion, is equally as important, if not more important.
Yeah.
You can have the best concussion management program in the world, but if parents can't or coaches can't effectively identify if a kid possibly had a concussion
Right.
and take the initial right step or two to guide them in the right direction, then that program basically is just sitting there and not able to help that kid at all.
Well, and most of us aren't going to come to see you unless you get that end where there's symptoms.
Yes.
Right. That's when we start to get nervous and we make that phone call. I see what you're doing, really similar to, we know how to take our kids' temperature.
Yeah.
We know how to check their pulse.
Yep.
We know if a kid
Yep.
gets injured, some general first aid stuff that is that initial contact.
Yep.
So you're really trying to create that piece to put in our first aid kit
Absolutely.
so that we
Yep.
have that. Okay.
Very well said.
Okay.
And the way I would look at it for a parent or a coach is something like this. If you're watching the game and your son or daughter takes a hit or has a collision, and they come off the bench, basically your job is pretty simple. It's just to assess, ask them how they're feeling, and if there's anything that tips you off that they might not be 100% in their normal self, we use the expression, when in doubt, sit them out and get them checked out.
Okay, when in doubt,
Yep.
send them out, get them checked out.
Yes.
Okay.
Real simple thing. Sit them out of the game, get them checked out by a professional. It's not your job to determine if they've had a concussion
It's
or
not the coach's job.
Yep. And why would it be? You guys haven't had that sort of training,
Right.
extensive training
Right.
to handle a pretty complicated thing.
Right.
But if you do notice that they come off the rink and you ask them how they feel, they say they have a headache, or they feel dizzy, or they feel nauseous, or they just don't, even if they say they're fine, and they look glazed over or fatigued or off balance.
If that little question
that
exists.
little gut feeling that maybe things aren't 100%, sit them out and get them checked out.
Okay.
Even if it means they have to miss the rest of a game, you're much better off having them miss the rest of a game and then going in to see myself or a different provider and getting it ruled out than you are missing it, telling them, I think you'll be okay, returning them to play, having them take a second hit or something like that. That's where you really see the long-term effects of it.
Right.
A concussion, if it's caught right away and managed correctly, it's on average a week or two that a player will miss with a concussion.
It's worth the time off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your brain will heal, you'll do well, you'll recover well. But if you miss it and they take two hits close together, that can impacts things quite a bit, and it can really prolong their recovery.
Okay.
And it can make it a much bigger issue. So a little management up front, following that simple rule, when in doubt, sit them out, get them checked out.
You know what
goes
we'll
a long
do?
way.
We'll have Robin, who's wonderful. She doesn't like when I mention her name, but she's really terrific on the backside of this. But we can put that on our screen. I mean, that's a tool that it's a saying that people can hold with them,
Yep,
right?
Exactly.
If that's all that they can remember,
Yes.
Wyatt is the guy, and that
We're
little,
doing all right if we get
our
that
little
message out.
acronym,
Yep.
your little saying. I think that's important for them.
Definitely,
Yeah.
Yep.
You say you do 2 or 3 talks a year?
Typically, it seems to average out about like
Well,
that.
someone's doing their job right, because I've been aware of these conversations happening, and you really have become, you're the go-to guy in our community for that conversation. But I'm also really grateful that we have a go-to guy in our community.
I'll say this, most small towns like us, where they don't have a lot of money in the school district to provide athletic trainers at every event
that's
and
real.
things like that. There's real life limitations that kind of cause that not to happen. And I will say that for us to have the concussion management program in place that we have is something that the vast majority of small towns across the country
don't have.
And I wish they would, but there's obvious real life limitations.
But and maybe there are things, we're just at the beginning of some changes that are coming. We talk about this as it reflects or as it relates to sports.
Yep.
But I think even as a playground monitor.
Yes.
Kids are they'll take it as far as they can.
Yeah.
They are at a different level of understanding how rough play can affect people. So it seems like that is something that it's kind of like CPR or having some basic knowledge that there isn't some value in this for anybody who's around.
Absolutely.
Kids that play, even adult sport leagues.
Exactly, and I would say in my practice, the majority I see are athletic related concussions, but I would say a quarter or more are related to things
Daily
on the
living.
playground or at home, or even adults at work, or
Icy
conditions
Yeah.
like we have here.
Yeah, I mean that happens, right?
Yep,
And
definitely,
you can tell any story you
Yep.
want and make it sound like it happened at the rain
Yeah.
garden, right? You know, to save a little pride.
Absolutely,
but the end
yeah.
result is you need to come in and have it checked out.
Totally.
Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah.
A little bit of care up front goes a long way with this sort of thing, and it can really save a lot of long-term issues down the road. Yep.
So I do really want to share what I think is a beautiful new facility here. So I'm going to capture some, just some images here so that we can share with.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
you know, I think this is all an investment in the health and wellness of our community at
Yes.
large. Is there anything, you know, and this is kind of an unfair question for me to throw at you here, but is there anything that you, you know, that in our conversation today that you really were thinking that you wanted to share with the community?
Yeah, I do think the one other thing I'd
Okay.
like to talk about related to concussions is a little bit about the program we use here.
Yeah, right.
I think I get a lot of questions from parents who kind of grasp it and kind of want more information on it.
Right.
I think it'd be a good chance to talk about
Okay,
that too.
let's go.
Yep, the way my concussion program works, we use a thing called impact neurocognitive testing. It's a fancy word for.
So you expect parents to understand
yeah.
this?
It's a fancy word for a computerized test that kids will take.
Okay.
That measures their memory and their reaction time and tells us a bit about their brain function.
Okay, so it's an assessment that involves some great technology.
Yeah, it's wonderful
Okay.
technology. It's actually the same technology used by basically all professional sports
Okay.
right now.
Okay.
We're fortunate enough to get it through a grant from the Kerry Park Old Timers Hockey
Really?
Tournament. Yeah, they've been really
That's-
really generous with that.
Thank you for helping that come full circle.
Yeah, and
because
they
in a
deserve
small
s-
community, that type of thing
Oh.
really, it's important to have that.
Exactly,
To
yeah.
see how that works.
Exactly. I think they deserve a lot of credit for
Yeah.
committing to that and investing in it for our kids too.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. That software, like I said, is basically the same software used in pro sports. It's wonderful stuff. Basically, the way it works is we have an entire team of kids that we know we want to monitor throughout the year.
Yep.
They come in before their season gets started,
Okay.
and they come in and take this test with me. We do it at the computer lab over at the high school.
Okay.
We use that as essentially as a baseline to know how this kid is normally, or at least
where are we at?
have part of a handle on their normal level of memory and cognition and things
And all
like
that
that.
is a baseline.
Yep.
There's no, you're not looking for anything other than establishing something to compare
Yeah,
future
yep.
assessments.
And honestly, we don't even look at them until
Unless you
very
have
much
to.
unless we have
Okay,
to. Yeah.
okay.
But then say if a player went through their season and then had a possible concussion, they took a hit or had a collision or something like that, and mom or dad remembered to be a little cautious,
Sure.
get them checked out. They come back in to see me here at the hospital. We
Mhm.
go through that test one more time. Typically, we like to do it within a couple days after an injury,
Okay.
but there's value in doing it basically within the first few weeks, essentially.
Which I think is important because that tells you
Yes.
healing time, right? You'll
It'll
still
give
be
you
able
some-
to see
yep.
something within a couple weeks after an injury.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
Yep, so with that, we can see, in addition to a normal physical examination that I would provide to looking at
Sure.
how the person looks neurologically as well, we can really tell how they compare to their baseline.
Okay.
Are they their normal self, or are they showing signs of a concussion and they
Okay.
aren't ready to, and one, we can use that to diagnose the concussion.
Yep.
And then two, we can use that to really assess over time how they're recovering.
Oh, okay.
We'll encourage rest early on, maybe sitting out of school for an initial day or two and then easing back into it after that, and definitely sitting out of sports until they've recovered from their concussion.
Right.
We'll track them over time and we'll see, have they gotten back to that point where they're back to their normal self or not?
Okay.
And once their testing looks good, their examination looks good, that's really, that test has served its purpose. We know that it looks like they've fully recovered and they're
Okay.
safe to start to get back out to play.
Okay.
And then from there, we follow this thing called a graded return to sport.
Okay.
So you don't go from sitting on the couch for a week or two to going full
Full
back
check league.
into your
Yeah.
contact hockey game
Yeah.
or something that night. We ease you back into sports over the course of about 4 or 5 days.
Okay.
Make sure that you don't have symptoms come back as you do.
Because those you could have symptoms even, they could see it in their physical play
Yeah,
as well, not
exactly.
just,
Yep.
okay.
Mhm. That's
okay.
the other thing too, a little bit of an aside, but a lot of times players, are very passionate about staying in the game no matter what, and they'll try to mask their symptoms or hide them.
Or say, no, my head doesn't
Yeah,
hurt, or,
yep.
yeah.
What I think players need to realize is that not only are you going to be potentially putting your brain at risk, but if you have a concussion, your reaction time's gonna be off, your thinking's gonna be off.
Neurological
Yeah.
doesn't just happen in the brain.
Yes.
And it's full body effects.
Yep.
Yeah.
And your performance is going to go down the tubes too. There's good data that shows people playing immediately after a concussion perform very poorly compared to it, and they're going to be essentially hurting their team too.
And at risk for injury at that point too as well.
Definitely.
Somewhere else in their physical body.
So trying to play through a concussion is basically a lose-lose.
Yeah.
Yep. So anyways, I wanted to tell a little bit about my program, how it works for parents, coaches, players who have questions about it. Any other time anyone has a question, I'm always happy to help. You can call me at the hospital
and
here.
We'll have those details here too.
Good. Yeah. And I really want to be just a resource for our community when it comes to sports injuries and concussions in general.
Are you open if there's a group that says to go out and speak to them to share this information?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And that's basically how it's worked, where I get asked to give a talk to a certain group of people a few times a year, and I'm always happy to do it. The more information we can get out there, the better. Yep.
This has been really eye-opening for me.
Good.
And I have a really big mouth, Wyatt. Well, because it matters, right? I mean, it's meaningful. It's meaningful to everybody that we live within our community, as well as we are a big small town.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Surrounded by a variety of other small towns. And this is Coochin County Community Television. So we're really doing outreach throughout the entire county, regionally. And so if that means that there's more awareness created around this subject, and that makes you a resource for even a broader region, that I think just is kind of a large amount of good that can come out of this.
Yeah, like I said, I'm always happy to help. I want to be the best I can in our community to help manage these concussions. Yes.
Well, I really appreciate you taking time today, and I did have to reschedule this a couple times. But I think it worked out great because you guys a lot was going on here. I mean, this is a big undertaking, this whole new place. You had to move everything.
Oh, yeah.
And it allowed us a little bit of quiet here so that we could have a conversation.
Definitely.
Wyatt, really good to meet you. I'm shaking your hand this time.
Yes.
And keep me posted.
Yes.
I hope that we can really get the word out to the community. This is something that can affect all of us. I am married to a guy who played football through college.
Oh.
And we have kids who are in contact sports.
Yes.
So it has a lot of meaning to us, a lot of value as we age.
Yes.
This is a new conversation.
It is.
But also a lot of value for those of us who are raising kids. And we want to wrap them in bubble wrap.
Yes.
Turns out bubble wrap isn't going to help.
No, not for concussions.
Not for this, right? Yeah. But it was very, very educational, and I think you explained it really well. You're definitely a community asset, so we're lucky to have you. Anytime that you guys have something else, that you think that the community can benefit from sharing, I know you guys have a lot going on here. We're really reaching out as much as we can to local healthcare providers at every level, wellness, fitness, recreation. So keep us in the loop. I'd love to come back, and I know you've got some other practitioners here too that have a lot going on, so it would be great to come back. Wyatt LaVigne, Rainy Lake Medical Center Therapy and Wellness Department Director. Thanks again.
Thank you.